Today, we're diving into the story of a brand that, let's be honest, everyone knows, Coca Cola. But this isn't really about their famous soda. Nope. It's about how this absolute corporate giant, staring down a massive shift in the world, pulled off one of the most incredible reinventions in modern business history. And really, that's the big question, isn't it? When you're a company as big and as old as Coca Cola, we're talking founded way back in 1886, change just doesn't come easy. So how on earth did they do it? How did they manage to pivot when the very ground beneath them started to crumble? And believe me, the stakes could not have been higher. The world was literally moving on. You know those sugary drinks that built their entire empire? People were starting to turn away from them. So for Coke, this wasn't about just tweaking a recipe. It was about staring a fundamental shift in culture right in the face. So every great story needs a villain, right? Well, for Coca Cola, it wasn't just one bad guy. It was more like a perfect storm of threats that all came together, making change not just a good idea, but an absolute do-or-die necessity. The pressure was coming from three directions, all at once. First, you had this global health movement, which meant consumers were actively ditching sugar. Second, the beverage aisle just exploded with new competitors. And third, technology was totally rewriting the rules of how you do business. Coke was basically being hit from all sides. And you can really see that battleground taking shape here. You've got Coca-Cola, the king of the castle for so long, suddenly surrounded. I mean, it wasn't just a two-horse race with Pepsi anymore. Suddenly, an army of challengers, from other giants like Nestle to all these new, agile startups, were all coming for a piece of their kingdom. But here's the thing. Instead of just playing defense, Coca-Cola went on the attack with a massive four-part strategy. And this wasn't just some new plan. It was a complete and total blueprint for their own reinvention. So their strategy hit four key areas: what they sold, how their company was structured, the tools they used, and their impact on the planet. Honestly, any one of these would be a huge project for a global company. Tackling all four at once? That was a seismic shift. The biggest move, you could argue, was diversifying their products. It was about moving way beyond their flagship soda. Sure, they introduced Diet Coke and Coke Zero, but the real game changer was how they massively expanded into juices, teas, smart waters, you name it. They stopped being just a soda company and became a total beverage company. Now, to move faster, they knew they had to rebuild the engine. They basically dismantled their old, slow corporate structure and reorganized into smaller, quicker, local teams. The goal was pretty simple. If you want to know what a customer in Tokyo wants, you make that decision in Tokyo, not back in Atlanta. And you do it in weeks, not years. Okay, so having a great plan is one thing, but actually making it happen across a massive global company, well, that's a whole other ballgame. So how did Coke manage the human side of all this? This next part is basically their playbook. And their playbook really focused on the people, using these 5 core strategies. This wasn't just about spreadsheets and corporate memos. No, it was about clear communication, visible leadership, and getting every single employee on board with the new direction. This is how you make change actually stick. The number one rule in their playbook: radical transparency. Instead of just sending down orders from on high, the leadership was constantly explaining the why behind all the changes. They laid out the benefits, not just for the stock price, but for the employees and customers too. And that's how they built that all-important trust. And this whole thing required a very specific kind of leadership. It wasn't just about having a big vision. It was about setting clear, achievable goals. Leaders at every single level were trained to guide their teams through all the uncertainty, acting like a steady hand to steer the ship through some really choppy waters. And finally, they turned the whole change process into a conversation, not a command. See, Coca-Cola got it. You can't force change on people. So they actively asked for input from employees at all levels, getting them involved in the planning. This created this powerful sense of ownership and, you guessed it, got way more people to buy in. Of course, a transformation this big was never going to be easy. There were some major obstacles. So let's take a look at the challenges Coke had to face head-on and what the results of all their radical efforts actually looked like. You can see their approach was super methodical. When employees resisted, the answer was more communication and getting them involved. To shift a century-old culture, they did it gradually, not all at once. For tech hurdles, they poured money into R&D and training. You notice a pattern here. For every big challenge, they had a clear, strategic response ready to go. And the results? Well, they pretty much speak for themselves. This number right here is just staggering. From one iconic product to a portfolio of over 500 brands. I mean, that is the ultimate proof that their diversification strategy worked. So, in the end, the whole reinvention really paid off. The company became more efficient, way more adaptive, and it secured a much stronger position in a global market that was changing incredibly fast. They didn't just survive, they set themselves up to thrive for decades. So, what can we all learn from this incredible corporate turnaround? Let's try and boil this whole story down into a few key takeaways that are useful for any leader or any organization that's facing a big change. Really, it all comes down to 3 timeless rules. First, adaptability is everything. Coke proved that having the guts to pivot is way more powerful than 100 years of tradition. Second, you have to attack the problem from all sides, your products, your people, your processes. And third, communication isn't just a nice to have. It's the absolute bedrock of any successful change. Coca Cola's story is such a powerful reminder that nobody is too big to fail, but also that nobody is too big to change. It proves that even a century-old icon can learn some new tricks. And that leaves us with a final question to think about. In a world where change is the only constant, who's going to be the next to adapt, and who's going to get left behind?